Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today's topic is the 4 worst deal-killing mistakes in real estate. So write these down. As always, I always like to start out the podcast by letting you guys know we are more than happy to share all of our notes with you, and just simply go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe to the newsletter. We ask you to do that at the top of every podcast because it saves me, frankly, from getting messaged on Instagram and all the other places asking for the notes. The notes we'd love to give you. They are free. It costs you nothing. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and use these notes for your social media. Use these notes for coaching and training agents in your office, your team, what have you. So please do go ahead and go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe. And remember, when you do, you've got to pop over to your own email and you have to confirm that you want the subscription. And the whole process takes maybe 45 seconds. So just do that now, harrisrealestatedaily.com, or the link is below.
All right, the 4 worst deal-killing mistakes in real estate. Once you've heard this podcast, you can't make any of these mistakes because you'll know what to do.
Or if you do make one of these mistakes, we'll say we told you so.
Told you so. There you go. All right. Negotiating has become more complicated now that the market's shifted for most of you. Currently, there's a mixture of homes selling quickly, sometimes still with competing offers, and homes that are taking longer to sell with perhaps only one offer, and many are even, expiring after having 0 offers or rejecting offers that could have been worked. So this means you've got to sharpen your skills if you want to win every time. Let's look at what these mistakes are. Mistake number 1, lack of communication between the buyer's agent and the listing agent. If you want to win, you need a meeting of the minds. The definition of negotiation is the reaching of a mutual agreement that all parties are satisfied with. You have to talk to each other to make this happen. And I've got a couple of different examples here. Example number 1, listing agents, if you want to receive offers that are easy to say yes to, actually put the desired terms in the agent-to-agent comments in the MLS. Or call those buyer's agents back who haunt you looking for the details that will help them to win. For example, easy example, your particular seller needs a 60-day close. They need to have time to get out of the house. Well, put that in there, and maybe the buyer's agents will write you a 60-day close instead of thinking that you want a cash offer that closes in 7 days that you're going to reject and look kind of silly.
Well, the added benefit of putting it in the MLS is that you'll prevent the buyer's agents from, or at least head off a lot of the buyer's agents from calling you and filling up your voicemail and texting you to
voicemail attack.
Exactly, right? So when you put up a new listing, you guys know what I'm talking about. You're going to get an onslaught in some cases from buyer's agents who are wanting to, know all the little inside track items to maybe get the buyer's offer accepted. Put all that stuff in the MLS. Obviously, if there's anything that you're a little uncertain about whether that you should be disclosing it, ask the seller first. And I think advanced coaching on that, and this is something that we always have our coaching clients do, is when the MLS description and pictures and all the knickknacks are loaded, you want to make sure you've sent a copy of that or had your systems or your team send a copy of that so the seller acknowledges that and that they've seen it. And that especially is important if you're including any sort of, the seller would, in the agent-to-agent comments, seller ideally would like to move in the month of April or whatever, things like that, that maybe, the seller, if they knew you would actually disclose that, because it turns out that they're having to sell in April for some personal reason, you might end up losing the listing. So make sure, yes, you disclose an agent-to-agent, but yes, you get permission from the seller, anything you think might be on the edge.
Important point there. Okay, example number 2, buyer's agents actually read all those comments in the MLS and counsel your buyers to comply with as many of the terms as possible if they intend to actually win. Now, if there aren't any comments, then you've got to find the listing agent and ask them, other than price, we can all assume price, of course, what will it take to win? Does the seller want that specific closing date, a lease back, or to keep their fancy chandelier? Find out and see what you can deliver on so that you guys have an actual meeting of the minds.
All right, advanced coaching. If you have a lot of listings and you are tired of having to deal with buyer's agents who are, ruining your life basically with all these questions, here's the shortcut. You need to get 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com. You should be doing this anyway for endless free buyer lead generation, but you could have a 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com toll-free number with an extension for every one of your listings, specifically to give information about the listings as pertains to the types of questions the buyer agent would normally ask you. So and we give this to you in Premier Coaching. Write down the top 6 or 10 questions that a buyer's agent's going to ask you about: time frame, what's included, what's not included, what's important to the seller, all that sort of thing, and pre-answer those questions and have it so in the MLS, you can say, buyer's agents, for additional information on this listing, please call 1-800-555-1212, whatever your extension is, and then whatever your number and extension is. And then the buyer's agents will be directed to call and listen to a pre-recording of all the pertinent information that they normally would pester you with. Now, if you can put it in the MLS, all the better. But if you can't, use 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com.
Yes, great system. Okay, mistake number 2, and we've talked about this on virtually every podcast because it's so important. No lender's letter or proof of cash, a weak lender's letter, or a boilerplate letter. If your buyer has financing, their lender's letter needs to show ideally that they are loan committed or at least pre-approved. It must state that their ratios, credit, employment, and down payment are adequate and verified. Additionally, the lender should call the listing and vouch for the buyer's ability to close.
How many days ago did we do the podcast where we focused on the ultimate addendum?
I think
was it 3?
on Monday.
Yeah. So go back and listen to the podcast that we did on the ultimate addendum. It's so critically important. So many deals are lost. So many, careers are derailed because of lenders' letters, or because honestly, it's because you guys don't know that most lenders' letters, whether they're pre-approved or pre-qualified, those are just Mickey Mouse terms that don't really mean anything. So definitely be using our ultimate addendum. That's included in Premier Coaching. And we did spend a lot of time on the previous, I think 3 days ago.
Yes. I think we've mentioned it almost every podcast.
Yep.
And do make sure that you personally, as a real estate professional, can accurately describe the differences between pre-qualification, pre-approval, and loan commitment.
So Premier Coaching, right? That's where you're going to find the pre-list, or where you're going to find the actual ultimate addendum. And it's just a catchy name for something that essentially acts as a checklist that you're supposed to give. If you're on the seller side, you're supposed to give to the buyer's agent. So in the buyer's agent, you give to the buyer's lender. So the buyer's lender can actually provide you with something that's not a Mickey Mouse lender's letter, where the only condition of the approval for that borrower for that particular loan product is the the appraisal of the property that they go into contract with. If you're accepting lender's letters that are not vetted, completely thoroughly drilled down with all the things we tell you guys to do in the ultimate addendum, chances are you're going to be losing deals left and right.
Yes, the ultimate addendum is just a tool to help get the lender to underwrite them faster. That's what's going on there. Okay. Mistake number 3, not being specific about sellers' concessions. Now, this is a big issue in today's market because you guys have come off of several years of not getting to have any concessions, so you don't really know how to deal with it. Some of you have never dealt with concessions before. Now, this can range from asking for a specific type of home warranty for a specific price to asking for thousands of dollars towards the buyer's closing costs, and many other types of concessions. But let's take the first issue. It's pretty straightforward. Just check the box on the offer stating the buyer wants a home warranty and state which warranty, that it's for a year and it'll cost X. That one's easy because it's written into almost all of your contracts. The second issue is more tricky. If you ask the seller, or you could be on either side of the transaction, but let's say the seller is being asked to contribute $5,000 towards the buyer's closing costs. State, after speaking with your buyer and their lender, what those funds are actually going to go to. Buying down the interest rate and paying prepaid expenses like taxes, homeowners insurance, and prepaid HOA deposits are appropriate. But if you're not specific, it can actually go to things that don't help the buyer.
Okay, so we have shown you guys in Premier Coaching, and we've talked about it on this podcast, how you can actually compete with new construction lenders as far as the deals they're offering their prospective build clients for financing. And you, in many markets, are going to have to be able to do the same level of creative financing that the lenders are doing. So if your rate right now is 7%, that's what your borrower is walking around with, and you've got a bunch of resale listings competing against new construction, even if the new construction is more money, but the builder's buying down the interest rates and the payments are less. Say the house is, new construction is $1 million, your resale is $700, but the payment on the $1 million, because the bought down rate is less than your $700. Guess which is more sellable? New construction. So you're going to have to learn how to do what the builders do. We teach you guys how to do this in Premier Coaching. And also, there's something else we just added to Premier Coaching. Actually, you've got to add it. It's on your list. The interactive net sheet. So basically, it's essentially this sounds like something, a net sheet, Tim, everybody uses that. we created a net sheet actually that's going to make it so that you can show the variables that might change throughout the transaction, closing costs being the example Julie just gave you. So you can show the seller in real time what their actual net's going to be. That way they can't say that they're caught. I didn't realize my net was going to drop by $5,000. I thought somehow that was going to be absorbed by some of their Mickey Mouse fee or whatever. Always disclose, especially when you're negotiating, what the actual numbers are going to. Otherwise, what's going to happen is when the seller gets a copy of the closing statement the day of closing or the day before closing, and the numbers aren't in alignment with what they thought they were going to be, guess what's going to end up happening? Oh, I know. You're going to end up basically eating it in your commission. So make sure you're disclosing. And now maybe you did disclose during the process of negotiating, and they just forgot.
Or you didn't explain it clearly.
Exactly. Or they act like they forgot.
Yeah, well, so that was the mistake, right? Not being clear about what the concessions are and how they work to both sides of the transaction.
And remember, you guys can join Premier Coaching right now for free. The link is down below to join Premier Coaching, or just go to premiercoaching.com.
That's funny. You didn't read this part, but you just said it. Failure to be careful when you're dealing with dollars will always bite you in the butt before closing.
Well,
and guess who's going to pay the price for the confusion?
Well, it's because you and I were just working on the things we were going to add to Premier Coaching and on your interactive net sheet. So the interactive net sheet's a really cool thing. You're going to be able to do, when you meet with a seller, one of the things we coach you guys to do is we coach you guys to show the seller low, medium, and high what the house might actually sell for. And so the low, medium, and high range would be, the more aspirational price would be the high one. The realistic market price would be the one that,
based on your comps.
That's in the middle. And then the low one would be not realistic, but, somewhere in the middle or somewhere less than what market is. And you show them all three, variable or all three outcomes. And when you're actually in the process of trying to compete for that listing, and then, that's going to give you an advantage because you're able to show them that This is a small, basic, tactical thing, but something your competitors aren't doing. And by the way, what I just described is part of Premier Coaching.
Yeah, and not doing net sheets for both your buyer and seller, but especially your seller. You will almost always be the one who pays the price for that.
Right.
You have to build that
skill.
on
our net sheet too, since we're still talking about net sheets, which is about the boringest topics you can think of, but
also important.
It also important. On our net sheets, also you want to have a processing fee. So the reason, you want to have a net sheet that's going to disclose to the seller the things I just described, but in all three scenarios, you're going to put what your commission is, and you're going to put what your, the processing fee you might charge. And you can charge $1,000. You can charge $1,200. You just have to disclose it. I'm going to give you guys another little advanced bit of coaching here. If you put, Bob's commission, and you're Bob, right? Seller's agent commission, and you just list it like that, and you're dealing with $1 million house, and you're charging that seller 3%, and that seller sees $30,000 going to Bob, that's going to most certainly be a target for them to want to go after for a reduction. So what you do is you take that same 3% and then you break it up into multiple categories, showing them where the commission goes, showing them what you're charging them for. Do denote it as a section on the net sheet so they can see what it is, but say marketing fee, negotiating fee, legal compliance, all the things, whatever it is that make up all the different bits and pieces of where your commission goes, and then just show them. And so this is the commission I charge, or this is the fee I charge for the services I rendered, and this is where this is where it's going. And when you show it like that, they're not just going to see this as some big red honey hole, some big, oh my gosh, why are you charging this amount of money? They're going to see where the money's actually going, and it's going to make sense, especially when you start telling them how many hours it takes to do each of those things. It's pretty funny, Joy, during this big fiasco about buyer agents commission that kind of came and went.
Yeah.
It was so hilarious. Some of these, grifters in the real estate business who were all like, I'm not going to get into the weeds as far as the politics and the legality of it all, but they were suggesting agents shouldn't make commission. Agents should be paid per hour. I was thinking to myself, you guys have got to be straight up morons if you don't think agents would love to be paid per hour.
Heck yeah.
For
all the hours, all the time.
Even if the agent was getting $30 an hour on most transactions, they would make a hell of a lot more money than they do. If they got paid like attorneys do.
Yeah, maybe you could pay double overtime for 3 a.m. real estate night sweats. That's hours, right?
I mean, but seriously.
I know.
Isn't that funny? It's like you add up how many hours you guys put into some of these transactions, and you guys get my point.
Well, people that said that obviously didn't do much real estate. I mean,
No. People were saying that were that not in real estate at all.
Yeah.
And they were trying to, basically just attack our
Throw 'em
industry.
under the bus,
By
yeah.
the way, have you noticed now that there's been a change in the White House and a change in all the, all that? You notice all that those conversations have just sort of gone away. Poof.
Yes, I know.
Bye-bye.
Isn't that interesting?
Back to business as usual. I guess it all was political after all.
It may have been. Okay. Now, mistake number 4 has a lot to it. Escalation clauses, escape clauses, appraisal waivers. Oh my. These are grouped together because the mistake is the same. There's 2 levels of mistake to this. The first one starts with the agent's understanding these clauses or waivers and what they actually mean. And the second part concerns the buyer's and seller's understanding. Nothing should be in a contract if you can't explain it yourself. If that means you've got to go to a contracts class, you guys all need CE credit anyway. That's a good idea. But I'm going to split out these 3 examples. Example number 1, escalation clauses. If your contract states that your buyer will go $1,000 above the highest and best other offers, it also needs to state not to exceed a certain dollar figure. Otherwise, you could get them in contract for something they can't afford to close on.
But the other widget on that, Julia, is a certain percent over appraisal.
Yes, that's true. Be specific. Okay, example number 2, escape clauses.
And we teach you guys, we give you all this language and teach you how to do this, obviously, in Premier Coaching. We're just giving you an overview.
Exactly. Okay, example number 2, escape clauses. These come in many flavors, the most common being a home sale contingency, which might read something like this. Seller accepts with the following contingency. Home will still be marketed, and if an equal offer with no home sale contingency is presented, the buyer will be given 72 hours to remove their home sale contingency and proceed to close or become a backup offer. That's about as clearly as you can write that. Some of you have boards that your language is already baked in and you just use their form.
The other solution to home sale contingencies is A, don't accept them, and
Right.
B, because in most markets you have to accept them. Make it so that the buyer writes the offer non-contingent of home sale. Make sure you get a good lender's letter stating that you can buy without the home sale, but then push the closing date back so they have a realistic amount of time to get the home sold. Obviously, there's a lot that has to line up for that, but then at the very least, your seller is going to get a non-contingent deal. And you have to make sure, again, the key here is to making sure all this work is use our ultimate addendum so you're not getting a Mickey Mouse lender's letter.
Yes, that's right. And do you know what caused me to want to do this topic for this podcast? I had a coaching call with a very experienced agent in Phoenix last week who had not until recently dealt with home sale contingencies. Now, she's got a $1 million+ house in contract, but it's contingent. It was their only offer, so they took it contingent on home sale. And her question was this, I thought it was interesting. She said, it's contingent on home sale. Is it ethical to continue to market it and to do an open house on it while we've got this contract? And I said, well, yes. What is your responsibility to? Representing your seller and getting them the best offer possible, right? But because she wasn't that comfortable dealing with this yet, she had the question, it made her feel kind of weird that she was still going to do that.
Let's give them some advanced coaching.
Does that
on
make sense?
Yeah. Who are your clients in Michigan? What are their names?
Jenny and Ryan.
Okay, so they're joining eXp Realty with us.
Yes.
And by the way, if you guys would like to join eXp Realty and partner with Julie and I, we would love the opportunity to earn the right to be your eXp Realty sponsors. If you don't yet have a sponsor at eXp Realty, like Jenny and Ryan didn't, and you would like to choose Julie and I, you can just obviously join eXp Realty right now. Text me at 512-758-0206 and I'll help you get started. Again, it's 512-758-0206. Or if you're on, obviously, if you're listening to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or whatever, there's a link below so you can learn more about our eXp Realty group. These are all the things that Julie and I offer you on top of what eXp offers you. We've made it a very easy decision for you to say, yes, I want to join eXp Realty, and yes, I want Tim and Julie to be my sponsors. So those are the two directions for you to go. And the quickest and easiest way for you to join is obviously just text me directly. And in the subject line of the text, don't call, just text. I never answer the phone. Just say, eXp Realty, I'd love to join. Give me a little background on yourself, and we'll get that conversation started. So go ahead and do that now. So back to Jenny and Ryan. So their average sale price in Michigan isn't that high.
Right.
Okay. So, and for half of our real estate careers, ours was not that high either. It was
Right.
an average normal sale price.
Sure.
And so I remember this one deal in particular that was 4 or 5 contingencies deep. Mm-hmm. And we had every transaction except the first one.
Yes,
So
I remember this.
Do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
And
I
it
can
was
probably name the addresses.
And it was like for us, it was like $140,000 in commission off
was a
all
ton.
these deals closing.
Yeah.
So basically, it was like a little first-time buyer that was buying one of our listings.
Yep.
That seller was buying one of our listings.
Yep.
That seller was buying one of our listings. You guys get it?
Yep.
Okay. So we had this.
Somewhere embedded in there was another agent, I recall correctly, but it was very much a stacked deep deal.
All right. So anyway, all of these closings, all of these sellers' hopes and dreams and ambitions, all of this, was dependent on that first damn house selling. And of course, all of these deals were contingent, right? Every damn one of them was contingent on the sale of the previous. You guys get it? Dominoes.
Most stressful closing month of our lives.
Guess what happened? That's right. The first deal fell out. And the first deal, that little dinky ass buyer house, the first time house they were selling was like no amount of money. House fell out. We got a cancellation letter. Of course, had we let that persist, one cancellation would have led to another, led to another. And then we probably would have lost all those listings because the sellers would have been pissed off at us. So what did Julie and I do? We bought their damn house. we went and bought that.
That's what it takes.
We bought the house, and it wasn't a very expensive house. And so we went and bought it, and then we were able to use the commission to basically pay cash for the whole damn house. Now, you can do that same thing. I was thinking of Jenny and Ryan because they're in an average sale price area where those numbers would work for them.
That, yeah.
Yeah. So think out of the box and be creative. And even if you're not necessarily as financially well off as you think you should be before you start thinking like this, start thinking like this, start making moves like this, and it'll change your financial situation. Lead with action, not with a bunch of thoughts, right? So our guaranteed home sale program that we teach you to use in Premier Coaching is essentially the framework for what I just described. But think out of the box, guys, because in that particular case, we took all those commissions, paid for that house. Now, maybe the house transactions would have been more. We could have then taken, let's say our total commissions would have been equal to 20 or 30% of the value of whatever house we were considering buying. That's the down payment to buy the house. Every lender, assuming you have decent credit, is going to approve you for that as an investment. Start thinking out of the box.
Also, all of your sellers will love you when you do that.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just made their lives easier.
And you're doing things that people don't even know. They didn't even, obviously other agents won't even, how the hell, what? You saved all those, if there were multiple agents involved in a transaction, my example, there weren't. But you've saved all of them from losing thousands of, you guys get what I'm saying here? You think marketing and branding is going to actually earn you a stellar reputation? It's the job you do as a realist. It's the product, your product. Ultimately, don't try to make yourself famous. Try to make the results you get for other people from providing superior service in your cases. That's what's going to make you not even famous. That's what's going to make you legendary.
Yeah, that's right. Being a problem solver, being of service, helping people accomplish their goals. Now, last but not least, all in the same bucket, is example number 3, appraisal waivers. This is fine if the buyer's all cash. And remember that over 25% of recent sales have been all cash. But if there's financing involved, the lender has got to be okay with that appraisal waiver. Otherwise, you may have your buyer in contract on a home that the lender may not approve for them if it doesn't appraise or doesn't come close enough. If it's an appraisal gap that your buyer's guaranteeing, make sure they have all the cash to support that and their down payment. Okay. I have seen several deals recently tank because they did both and they weren't specific and they didn't realize what they were doing. So how do you do that? We go back to the net sheets. Prepare buyer net sheets and seller net sheets. So the buyer knows what they're spending at closing, not just on their down payment, and the seller knows what they're going to net. It's not just a first-time buyer issue, by the way. A lot of buyers, remember, they don't transact that frequently. They're not used to it like you're used to thinking about it. They just think, well, I've saved up this much down payment. I'm going to have a little bit of closing costs. But if you throw an appraisal gap on the top, you might have just wrecked the deal.
Just listening to us in the last 23 minutes,
yes,
I was realizing how many of these things I would have killed to have known.
Instead of experience, how do we even know all of this stuff, right? And a lot of this is symptomatic.
When we got into the real estate, think how many more people we've been able to help if we just listened to this one podcast.
Well, the thing the client I was telling you about in Phoenix was my impetus for doing this. But this has been a mixture of different stories that have been surfacing because much of what we talked about today is symptomatic of a more normal type of market.
Totally.
Right? And so a lot of these agents haven't dealt with any of this because things were fast and furious for so long.
Okay, so I'm going to give them some advanced coaching since they stuck
Warning.
it out. Okay, so another thing we teach you in Premier Coaching is how to use the Guaranteed Home Sale Program when you're trying to romance the new build reps. All right, so I want you to imagine this. you're going to have new build reps in your marketplace, and let's assume there's a lot of them, and let's assume they're building things that are going to be in price ranges where the numbers completely make sense for you commission-wise. And by the way, a lot of times with new construction, they pay a premium commission, and the build reps aren't commissioned. They're salary-based, and maybe they get a bonus, but they'll pay you at least, usually in most major markets, 3%, sometimes 4%. Okay.
Yes.
And here's the best part of it. That's if you're, helping them put a buyer with a new construction home. A lot of the buyers, especially the ones that are moving up to new construction or have houses to sell, the big nemesis of new construction build reps, of new construction builders, is the freaking home sale contingency.
Yep.
Because they go and put somebody in contract on some $1.5 million new build, but the person's got to sell their house. And let's say it takes 6 months or 9 months and the house still hasn't sold, and the house they have to sell is like $400,000 or just however the math works out. Okay. You guys, make sure the math works out for you before you take this idea in particular. You can go to the new build rep and you can say, listen, if you've got anyone that has to sell a house, which is going to probably be most of their build clients, and you suggest that they list with me, I will put a guarantee on their house, which guarantees the sale of their home, which means that you don't have to worry about accepting a contingency offer on their house. In other words, on your contract. In other words, when you get an offer from the next 20 new build clients, 19 of them are probably going to have home sale contingencies. You tell all of them to list with me, and I'll put a guarantee on it, and that means you can essentially have contracts that are good to close, and you don't have to worry about those essentially flaking out. You are doing that builder such a huge service,
Yes.
And you're also getting an enormous competitive advantage in your marketplace.
It's huge.
It is huge. Now, how do you do it? We teach you how to do it in Premier Coaching.
Yeah.
In some cases, you can buy them yourself. In other cases, you're going to use investor money. Sometimes you can use, a cash offer type deal. We teach you how to do all this in Premier Coaching. But really, at the end of the day, what this is going to do, it's going to give you a unfair advantage. We're big fans of that term. We want you to have an unfair advantage in your marketplace. We don't want to play fair. We don't want a level playing field. We want you to absolutely win. Real estate is competition. Life is competition. We're done with this era in our country where we act like everyone can be a winner and everyone gets a participation trophy.
But participation trophies are not commissions.
Exactly. And so you have one person gets a check, one person gets paid, a whole bunch of people basically lose. We want you to be the winner. We're going to do everything in our power to always give you the unfair advantage in the marketplace, to be dominant with resale, to be dominant with new construction, be dominant with notice of default, be dominant with probate, to be dominant with it does not matter. You need to learn how to dominate your market. Have that mindset. And I know some of you don't think like that. You're not wired like that, and I appreciate it. But if you're wired, if you can maybe manifest 10% of it, right? If you could just be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more competitive, think of a huge difference it would make in your business and your personal life. So listen, guys, thank you for allowing Julie and I to be in alignment with our highest and truest purpose on this planet, and professionally speaking, of course, is being real estate coaches. We love the opportunity to present our information because we know it makes a meaningful impact on your lives. Again, it's always our pleasure and our honor to walk this path with you. Our slogan is love your real estate journey. And that's certainly how we feel every time we're doing this podcast. We try to motivate you. We focus on educating you. Now it's your turn to get into action. And one of the actions we strongly encourage you to take is if you're ready for a broker upgrade, let's talk about you joining with Julie and I at eXp Realty. Text me at 512-758-0206. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.